You answer 30 questions about yourself. You assign a lot of colleagues to answer these same questions about you. It really brings people's humanity out. I think it was the first time I saw someone cry. I started crying because we work so hard in our roles and we do our best every single day. And then to get feedback from someone that either is super positive, that shows and validates that, or maybe a little less positive, really for me was like kind of connected that we are human and we're trying to lead, and you can't take one away from the other.
Welcome to IDD Leader, where human services leaders grow their impact, lead with heart, and build the workplaces our field deserves. I'm your host, Nate Beers. Let's dive in. Today, you're in for a treat. My guests are Dr. Caitlin Bailey and Kristen Loomis Greenidge. They're the co-directors of the National Leadership Consortium. They will share with you more about their roles and the work that organization is doing. But it is like a masterclass conversation on what does it look like to be a leader in the field of human services, everything from emerging research trends, workforce development issues, and so much more. I think you'll really enjoy it. This is part one of two-part conversation. The next part will come out on the subsequent episode of this show. And stick around to the end, and I'll share with you a free resource to help jumpstart the leadership practices of your frontline supervisors at your organization. Well, without further ado, enjoy today's conversation. Well, let's start with the most important question. If you had to pick a famous athlete or movie character that best represents the work you do, who would it be?
All right, I can go first. Or no, Kristen, I'm sorry, you go ahead.
Either, yeah. I think it's funny you're asking about athletes. To two of us, we're not exactly sports aficionados, but I will say, in terms of thinking kind of recently, and as we're coming up to the start of the football season, definitely being a Philadelphia Eagles fan, Nick Sirianni comes to mind. I know it's kind of a cop-out because he's a coach, but really thinking about that playbook piece, and that's a lot of what we do is we have opportunities to work with teams, with organizations, with leaders, and to provide some great plays, to provide some great input, information, what's worked in the past, how can we look at your strengths, but we aren't the ones actually playing or on the field. So definitely I would say that Nick Sirianni comes to mind a little bit when I think of that question and sort of what we do and how we could relate it to our field.
Nice. How about you, Caitlin?
I went football too, surprisingly, again, because,
Let's go.
but I know. But I grew up in a Bills household, and so to make my father and brother proud, I chose Josh Allen. He's got that phrase, do good, or be good, do good, God bless, go Bills. And I think that there's a lot of like that vibe that we try to have come through in the work that we do, right? We try to do good, we try to be good, but that go Bills, that there's a lot of fun, I think, in thinking about how you develop yourself as a leader. And sometimes we forget that in our field or forget that in our work. And so that kind of like, how do we come together and build camaraderie and build relationships is something that we think about a lot. And so I chose Josh Allen.
Love it. That's great. And perfect timing for football season's just around the corner. By the time this episode drops, we might even have hit week 1 or 2 by then. And so that's wonderful.
Amazing.
But a little more seriously, if you could introduce yourselves, share your role at the National Leadership Consortium, and then tell me the moment when you knew you were in the right field, if you can think of a moment that kind of captures that.
Yeah. So I am Kristen Loomis Greenidge. I'm one of the co-directors of an organization called the National Leadership Consortium on Developmental Disabilities, with Caitlin, of course, being the other co-director. And in our organization, we focus a lot on the human rights of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, really focusing on the way that we can influence organizations, systems, and services by helping to develop, promote, support leaders. So in our system, in our field, in the United States, internationally. And in the role that I'm in as the half co-director, the piece that I really focus on is a lot of the program pieces, a lot of trainings that we do through the opportunities that we've had both starting at the University of Delaware, which is where our organization was originally founded, and where I actually joined the team in 2012, to now. I've worked in 4 different positions at the organization, had an opportunity to at the University of Delaware get my MBA with a concentration in strategic leadership, and really use those skills to think about our organization and how we can grow and promote the programs that we do, the trainings that we run, the way that we interact with others, and of course think about some of the good business skills that need to come with running an organization, of course. And for me, it was kind of a 2-part of when I knew I was in the right place. I started part-time in the organization, just looking for a job while I was in college, and thinking about just, hey, this job that was supporting a national conference at the time called Reinventing Quality sounded really interesting. Applied, really liked the work I was doing in terms of that event planning, and really found a great network, great connections with the people on the team and around surrounding that. And that was kind of the first part I felt like I was in the right kind of role. And then I had the opportunity to be more involved in some of our more leadership focused trainings. And through seeing people coming to the trainings, the impact that it had, the difference between when they came in the beginning of the week and when they went back, and even more so, hearing from our research and stories about impact, seeing how we could provide the tools for people to make such a difference in others' lives, in the services and supports. That's really when I felt a really strong connection to the field, to the work that was being done, to the work that needed to be done. And that feeling has not gone away, and has only grown. And the opportunities that arise now, I think, and challenges, have made it kind of a continual changing atmosphere that make it exciting to be involved in this work.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm actually excited to circle back to some of that transformation that you've seen through the work of those week-long institutes and other things. But let's hear from Caitlin on this one.
Yeah, so Caitlin Bailey, the great benefit of introducing myself second is that I just get to say, yeah, I'm the other co-director. So Kristen and I don't do exactly the same thing, but being a co-director is a real gift in not only introducing yourself, but also in getting to share responsibilities, and always having a person to bounce things off of. So that's what she said is a lot of what I do. I focus a little bit more on the research side because that's my background sometimes. And then a moment that I knew I was in the right field was pretty early on. Like Kristen, started working with the National Leadership Consortium because of our connection to the University of Delaware. I was in graduate school, and we had assistantships that paid a grad stipend, but also helped cover tuition. So that was pretty incredible. And so I got to start working with the National Leadership Consortium. In that time, I started working pretty quickly over one summer, and kind of got like thrown into it. And so a lot of the work that I was doing was programs, and a lot of like running around and planning and logistics, which traditionally isn't like my strong suit, but I loved working with Steve and Nancy, who are the founders of the National Leadership Consortium, and really got passionate about seeing their passion got me passionate about the work as well. I knew I wanted to work in a human service field. I didn't know that it was the disabilities field until I had the opportunity to do it. But at the first Leadership Institute that I was at, I will say that was my like, oh, I'm in the right place moment, because there was this mix of working really, really hard during the day to understand yourself better as a leader, to understand where the field is going. And then at night, we would all go out and sit at a bar, have a drink, and just like talk about the work that people did. And so I got to learn more about people as humans and their passion and how that related. And it was fun and it was engaging and it was inclusive and everybody belonged just because we were sitting at that table together. And I thought, oh yeah, this is what I want, to work really hard and also to feel like I'm a part of something.
Wow, that's really cool. So it sounds like that community piece was a big deal and
It was huge.
and
Yeah.
part of that
Yeah,
journey
it was
for you.
huge. Yeah.
Um, so speaking of these week-long leadership institutes, which you've both referenced, can you describe a little bit about that and what types of leaders attend? What kinds of backgrounds do they have or roles are they representing? And maybe like what's the goal, from the before and after?
Yeah, the institutes are an opportunity. It was basically the premise of creating the National Leadership Consortium from, as Nancy referenced, Steve Eidelman and Nancy Weiss. The thought behind it was an opportunity for people to come together to look at and think about their leadership skills, to really look at and challenge the way that things were in their organizations and in the field, and to work together to really think about solutions, opportunities. How could we be doing more to meet the wants, the needs, and ultimately fulfill and support the human rights of people who are utilizing and choosing our supports and services across the country. And so it's leaders who are from different kinds of organizations across the country and internationally, who are working in all different kinds of organizations and different roles. We have some people who come from provider organizations and a variety of different positions within those, state systems leaders, so those who are working from that state level to try to change the system or try to look at and think about those challenges and the opportunities, advocacy organizations, funders. So it's just a unique opportunity that for a week, if it's in person, or we do also have virtual options, people to come together and to learn together, to hear what's happening in other states, in other parts of the system, to get outside of what can sometimes and oftentimes we hear from leaders be such a lonely and kind of siloed part of our work, and really come together to challenge ideas, to share solutions and successes, and really leave feeling more confident in their leadership and in understanding who they are as leaders, and then really thinking about how can they then use their skills and their new connections and community and network to make changes that are needed to really better meet needs and wants of people who are using our supports and services across the systems.
Okay.
I think, to just real quick to build on what Kristen was saying too, there's like a magic that happens when people come from different places around the country or around the world, and also that come from different positions, that they say, oh, you're dealing with that too in your state, or oh, you're leading in a completely different role in a completely different position with completely different experiences than I have, and we are facing the same like really human challenges in leadership. And so that connection that people build just because of the differences that they have is pretty remarkable.
Wow. So along those lines, what's an unforgettable aha moment that either one of you observed or witnessed? And it could be, I mean, it could be funny, it could be moving, it could just be something that sticks out to you.
I think for me, I mean, I've had these kind of over and over and over again. We do an assessment called the Leadership Practices Inventory, which is like a 360 assessment. So you answer 30 questions about yourself. You assign a lot of colleagues to answer these same questions about you, and then you get the responses. So you get to see how you rated yourself versus how others rated you. And so we do that every time every person who comes to the Leadership Institute does that assessment and gets those results. And we always go through a process of processing those results and then having conversations about it. And I think I have aha moments. I mean, the first time I saw this happen, but then over and over again, it really brings people's humanity out. I think it was the first time I saw someone cry. I started crying because we work so hard in our roles and we do our best every single day. And then to get feedback from someone that either is super positive that shows and validates that, or maybe a little less positive and kind of like goes against what people think that they're trying to do is really, really for me was like kind of connected that we are human and we're trying to lead. And you can't take one of those out of you can't take one away from the other, if that makes sense. And so I think that for me has shaped a lot of the way that I've approached our leadership development in the work that we do is trying like really hard to recognize and to bring in, we are all imperfect humans trying to work with other imperfect humans and lead with other imperfect humans. And like, let's start from that. So that's my aha moment.
And I have kind of two that came to mind when you shared that. And one is in line with how Caitlin just shared that. We, in addition to the week-long Leadership Institute we talked about, we do a number of other programs, one of which is called LEAD, and it is specific for direct support professionals. It's a multi-week in-person and virtual training. And at a recent LEAD session, we had someone who came in and kind of had been encouraged by their supervisor to come and was a little bit skeptical and I mean engaged, but just, I'm not sure I would have signed up for this if my supervisor hadn't asked me to. And about partway through, so it's an 8-week program, partway through, she came in and she said, I just wanted to let you guys know, 2 weeks ago, or maybe it was 6 weeks in, so at the 4-week mark, halfway in, I applied for a position in my organization that I never would have applied for had I not been a part of this program, because being a part of this, not so much, although she did mention a couple of things that we did as facilitators or bringing in speakers, but she said the camaraderie of the group helped me to feel more confident in what I was doing as a leader and who I am as a leader. And so that gave me the confidence and the want to apply for this, where I otherwise would have said, oh, I'm not qualified. And she got the position. And of course, we know that we are not the reason she got that position. Her supervisor obviously had a lot of faith and belief in her, and that's why she recommended her for the program. But that extra step of feeling confident and supported and feeling like your views of yourself align with what others might be seeing, that was a huge, exciting, moving kind of aha moment. And we see those unexpected moments happening also in a lot of ways during our trainings, because we bring in some great presenters and great speakers. We are not the ones who are giving content all the time through the training. We give a lot of leadership and we do content and exercises and things, but we also bring in people who are doing great things across the country and internationally to share. And you can see when something that someone shares resonates with someone in the audience, when they ask a challenging question. Why are we still doing this like that? Is it because it makes sense, or is it because it's that old, because we've always done it that way, right? Or someone talking about, I had this challenge and here's something that we did try to overcome that. And you could just see when people write down in their notebook immediately, we have to try that. And then you hear those conversations. How did you implement that? How did you fund that? Let's talk about what that could look like in our system. Those kinds of collaborations between the participants, but also between the presenters that we asked to come in and present, and the participants can be so impactful. And we just see that over and over and over again. And a lot of times those continue beyond. We see conversations happening between presenters and between participants well beyond the time that they're with us.
That's really cool. And it actually kind of it's encouraging to me, because part of my goal, as I've been recently trying to bring a lot more guests on the podcast, is exactly to do that, is to help people see what else is happening out there. Because even though in an organization you're not technically alone, I mean, there's going to be people around you, but sometimes in whatever role that person's in, they might still, it's very easy to feel alone or feel like they're not sure what we're swinging this the best we know how to, but we're not sure if we're doing it right. And then hearing what other people are doing can be just a huge learning experience, and a sense that, oh, we're part of something that's so much bigger than ourselves, or even so much bigger than our own organization. There's a whole movement of people that are giving it their best to help individuals with disabilities live life to the absolute fullest. That's really cool. That's something that you guys have seen over and over again as a transformative moment for participants. Now, changing gears just a little bit, I know that research is another emphasis that's part of the NLC. I was curious whether from research you've done or research that you've just been like reading and taking in, what's the research saying when it comes to staff retention and engagement? I mean, there's kind of some well-known kinds of things like, oh, well, if we could solve the reimbursement rates, that would really help a lot. So, I mean, obviously that's a huge one, and there's a lot of push for advocacy along those lines. But give me some other insights on, or even speaking more to that directly, but when it comes to what the research is saying, staff retention, staff engagement, and especially anything that might run counter to sort of conventional wisdom.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Nate, you probably know this better than we do, right? There's so much good research nationally that's going on. The National Core Indicators, research on the workforce that shows, I think it's an average of about 40% turnover in organizations. There's a study from Metascat it's from 2016, so I know it's about 10 years old, but I come back to it often because I think the findings, the way they put them, anyway, people stay because they care so much about the work that they do and the people that they support. People leave because of their relationships with their managers or their relationships with each other, and pay. I don't want to take pay out of it, right?
Sure.
You need to talk about making sure that people have and can live lives that they can not only survive but not have to work 4 jobs or not have to work round the clock, like all of those kinds of things. And there are so many experts in our field that talk about that really, really well. And so I just want to, like NADSP and the work that they're doing around the retention and the rates and all of that kind of stuff, just like I would go to them anytime you want to have that conversation. Probably what we can bring into it is like our perspective on leadership. This isn't from inside of our field, but Gallup, an organization that does some of the best research on engagement, finds that like 70 to 80% of people at any given time working in any field are disengaged, which means there's low morale, low connection, low motivation, like those kinds of things. And that for us has been not necessarily an aha moment, but that's something that we focus on a lot in the work that we do, because we know that if people are staying because they care about the work, but they're leaving because of the tough relationships that they have at work, then tough relationships are kind of like what we need to address and help people to address. And again, I'm sure that so many people have said this before, but right, we promote people because they're good at the work that they do, not because they're good at working with other people necessarily, not because they're good at leading other people. And so not to sound self-serving, but supporting people and teaching people how to lead with other people is like one of the most important things that organizations can do. And I think that that's where, to Kristen, the point that you were just making about how leadership can feel very lonely, or how this field can feel very lonely. It's an amazing thing when you get people together in a room and you start to talk about their strengths, you start to talk about how they work with other people, you start to talk about like building those connections within the workplace, and you see all these light bulbs going off like, oh, okay. That makes so much sense. Like I have focused really on what's the process for this. We write you up when this happens. We do this next thing. We do this next thing. And really what we could be focusing on is like, how do we build trust together? How do we build relationships? If we start from this place of we all care very deeply about the work that we do, or let's assume we all care very deeply about the work that we do, how do we then work well together to do that work? I think if people would start talking about that or had the opportunities to talk about that more in the work that they did, our field would be all the better for it.
Hmm.
We talk a lot on our team, like how do we build trust? How do we define our culture? How do we work together? We have shared agreements, those kinds of things. And I mean, of course, we need to do that, right? Because we're a leadership organization, so we need to model that. But I just got a text from a colleague of mine this morning talking about how they were presenting, our research team yesterday was presenting in Ohio about a grant that we have talking about the research that they were doing, and they had the opportunity to talk to other people who were part of the DD Council that they were reporting to, and asking about why you do this work and how you're in this field. And my colleague just said, it was just such a moment of clarity of like, I am in the right place because of the team that we've built and because of the way that we do this work together. And like, our team is small and we go through it sometimes because we get way too busy, but to have that, like, be able to come back to each other and be like, oh, I really like you and I really trust you and I'm going to work really hard because of those things with you, is pretty powerful. And I think that organizations struggle to build that. It's a long answer.
A lot of valuable things that you just shared. And to follow up with that, whether that's coming from you, Caitlin, or you, Kristen, most organizations, I would venture to say, or just hypothesize, they have some awareness that this is, if it's not going well, like they kind of might know, like, man, there seems like there's a lot of drama, or, but there can be this cycle of survival mode, when there's high vacancies, or then it's like, we know we don't believe in kind of the warm body syndrome, but like, it's that or what? I mean, they already live in our res, or they're already coming to our day. Do we just tell them, oh, we're shutting down that house and you have to go find another provider? Like, that's not a great option, because that's basically how you shut down a business. So someone's let's say someone's maybe not full on survival mode, but they're feeling the pressures of that. What's a really practical way, other than attending the Leadership Institute? Okay, that's a nice shameless plug here for you guys. By all means, take a week and do that. But
not even ours, just like,
but they still should go to yours too. But anyhow, besides that, what's something in where they are right now that they could implement that would start? I mean, I understand there's going to be whole systems and processes, but like, what's something they could just, if they're like, I need to take a step towards that right now, what would that be?
I think one of the things that we see is sometimes leaders who come to the trainings that we're a part of, or that we're running, or the conversations that we're a part of, think, well, I could figure out what the issue is and I can come up with that solution. And oftentimes what we see is that's someone in a decision-making authority. So someone in part of the organization where they would be able to make that decision and try something. And that's great to have that awareness, to think about those next steps. But what we also know from seeing it successfully done in other organizations and from research is that you really need to have a true sense of what's actually happening in the organization, and what are people actually struggling with. What do they actually want? Why? And we talk about exit interviews. We've seen some great organizations do, I forget the name that they use, but basically, why are you still here interviews?
Stay interviews.
Stay interviews. Thank you.
Yeah.
The opposite of leaving.
Sure.
And those kinds of things where you're actually hearing and having opportunities, and it doesn't have to be every person in the organization. We know that can be impractical for some organizations, right? But if you have opportunities to hear from different levels, from the people who choose the supports and services of your organization, from those in your orbit, of like, what's working? How do we identify and what we call kind of bright spots, but the appreciative inquiry framework, which really is in every organization or in every situation, something is working. So what is it? What is it that is keeping people? But also, what are the real challenges that people are seeing in the day-to-day? And sometimes you'll find it's something that you can fix pretty easily. Listen, this software system, when we started it, it has created so many issues because we don't feel supported in being able to utilize it. And so then we end up spending much more time in that. That's a really actionable thing that might not have come out if someone was just looking from the top down and saying, well, we don't have enough time in the day to do these kinds of things. So I'm not sure what we're going to do to solve them. So that would be one thing I would say to start with that. And if you can, even better, bring in someone outside of the organization, even just one person, to do a lot of those discussions. People, depending on your culture, might feel that they cannot safely, and when we talk about safely, like psychologically safe environments where they feel like there's not going to be repercussions for something they say, they might not feel as though they can share with someone internal. So if there's a way to do that with someone externally, that's even better.
Okay, that's insightful. So listening, some of what I'm hearing you say.
All of that, yep, all of that summed up in that one word. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, you put it more eloquently, but
I, I just I'm so appreciative that you talked about that. I think that sometimes, and I think the way I was saying it sometimes can get to this like, well, if organizations only did this, but we say this all the time. I've never met someone in this field who's like, I have room on my plate, like put something on, do it. And so we are so now, we as a collective field, and also especially organizations that are providing services, organizations that are running states or doing regulating services, those kinds of things, just like absolutely running as fast as they can. And that warm body syndrome that you talked about is so important. I think, Kristen, though, what you're saying too, like that listening and that just like, is there a moment that we can take a pause and recognize what's going on and say, is this how we want to work together? Is this how we want to do this? Can we recognize that we are all here and the fact that we're all here is huge, and appreciate that and then move forward from there, as opposed to uh what happens when I get busy, where I get into this mentality of like, do you know how busy I am? Like, I don't have time for that. I don't have time for this. I don't have time for you. I don't have time for that conversation. And so helping people to, I think, like shift that mind frame a little bit to like, let's talk about what's working, what's not working, but let's talk about how we're feeling as a team, as an organization, and what we can do about that is really powerful. It does take time. I'm not trying to say it doesn't, but it's really powerful.
yeah, that's been a recurring theme as I've been talking with different leaders is that just the utmost importance of listening and of if you have to create a safe place, then it actually could be counterproductive. If you're like, tell me your opinion, but they don't trust you, then actually they just trust you even less because you. I mean, it's very cyclical in that way. But that listening
Yeah.
piece. In fact, I was just on a very recent episode talking with Dr. Peter Gerhardt, who oversees Epic schools and Epic programs in New Jersey, and he said, in his estimation, half of all problems disappear if you just listen to people. But that usually, if you're in this field, you're in it because you're a doer and you want to help people, like you're quick to help and support. But that if you can just listen, that really can solve a lot of things. Now, obviously, it can't end there. If someone says, the software
Yeah.
stinks, and you're like, wow, I really heard you. That software's tough. Okay. And you don't do anything about it, then they're not going to feel better.
Right.
But,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
And I think
but yeah,
that's just to, on that point, it's also not about doing something just to do something, right? Like if someone says the software is not great, but it is not in the organization budget to change the software, or at the moment, it's going to take time to find someone to come in to do adequate and appropriate and meaningful training. Following up, saying,
mm,
we heard you. Here are the things that we're doing from that. And here are some things that we at this moment can't do. At our training, we try to, a very small part of that, we try to model that at the end of every day. We say, share something that you appreciated about today and something for us to do or do differently tomorrow or next time we run this. And what we do the next day, and sometimes anyone who's attended our trainings, it probably feels a little monotonous to them, but we make sure that we address, here are the things that you appreciated. Here are the things that you asked for us to do or do differently. And here's what we're able to do, or the plan with those things. And that can just share that you're not just listening, but you're actively listening, you're thinking, you're engaging, and can be really meaningful in developing trust, which is a huge thing that can really impact the way that leaders experience working in organizations when there's a culture of trust or a team that they trust versus not.
100%. I 100% on that. And that what you just highlighted is so key because I think it can be very uncomfortable to come back to someone and say, actually, we can't even solve that now. But it builds trust, and it despite the discomfort of being the one to be the bearer of bad news, hopefully don't shoot the messenger. But I think that what you shared is actually very crucial. It's great insight that circling back and in a timely way so that people recognize, even if it's not something we can solve now, like not just I heard you in the moment, but this is our path, or this is what we're looking at, how we're going to do. It's going to take us 3 months or 6 months or whatever it is. But I think that's really, really insightful.
And inviting them to be a part of that solution if
Mm,
they're interested. having opportunities for people to have a key role in coming up with some of those solutions.
Man, you're just dropping them left and right. Okay, that's another good one.
It's all,
uh,
everything you're saying is just reminding me of all these great tips.
yeah, yeah. Um, I had another question also kind of back to some of the research stuff. If are there trends or findings from studies that have translated into really actionable insights for leaders? And maybe if you even have an example of an insight from research that then directly changed how an organization led its people or worked with its people.
Yeah, absolutely. I can think of two off the bat. One is it's not our research, but that the Leadership Practices Inventory, that LPI, they use that data. So it's that, but we've seen people completely, um, I wouldn't say change their leadership personality or style because that's not what we're going for, right? But like really have some insights of, oh, I think I'm doing this and you see this differently, and go back and have some meaningful conversations with people that they work with, and to build exactly on what Kristen was just saying, to do that discomfort or uncomfortable thing of saying, I don't like this data, but I'm going to try to do something about it, and here's how I think I can be responsive, is really, really great, and has led people to just give us a lot of good feedback about how they are leading differently in their work. We also do a study called the Organizational Priorities and Practices Inventory, where it looks at, we talk to people or survey people who are working in organizations around 6 key areas of best practice within organizations. And we ask everybody in an organization who's working in there to respond to it. And so it measures things like, how do you feel your organization is doing to promote inclusion for people, or to promote choice and control for people? Or how do you think your organization is doing in regards to best practices related to leadership and management and governance and diversity, equity, and inclusion, and those kinds of things. And when organizations have taken that or made that opportunity available to people across the organization, then they can see, oh, wait, the direct support professionals in our organization don't think we're actually quite as great as we thought we were in terms of how we support people to like really have choice and control in their lives. Or we've been implementing these management trainings or these management initiatives where we're trying to help people work better together. And we see that it's really working in these teams, or between, do you know what I mean, supervisors and direct support professionals, but it's not really working between directors and executives in our organization. And then it gives people that targeted, oh, I'm going to do something about this. We work with one organization in particular that has used that data over and over and over again, or a couple of years now, to say, we want to address this issue of retention. Let's look at this data to figure out where it is that we have similarities and differences across the organization, and how do we make people feel more committed to and more appreciated in the work that they do. So they've, again, not sound self-serving, just we know this because we get to work with them,
Sure.
have started implementing more training around developing leaders, developing managers, those kinds of things. And I found that it's really impacted the way that people feel about their jobs and the way that people feel about how they work together.
That's wonderful to hear that
it's great for us.
It's working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it is great. And that we talk about data-driven decisions all the time in our field and our organizations, but to have some evidence that says, this is working or this isn't working, and then to try to do something about it and be responsive, we think is probably the most just really, really important. In the same way that you're saying we shouldn't ask people in our organizations to give us feedback if we're not going to be responsive to it, even if it's to say we're not going to do anything. We also can't do the same thing with our data. We can't collect data and then say like, oh, that sucks, and then move on. That's a way to really decrease trust as well.
Wow, a lot of amazing insights there. Don't worry, part 2 is coming out in a week, or if you listen to this more than a week after it's released, you can already listen to part 2. You don't even have to wait. This was a loaded conversation. Now, I always try to leave you with something actionable that you could implement right now, a next step you could do. I want to take a moment to think about aha moments. Those times when you kind of get something, a fresh perspective, or realize something either needs to change or can change, or things can be different. And what I want to give you for a next step is this: give yourself permission to reflect on whatever one of your more recent aha moments has been in your role serving people. So often we get stuck in the busyness of it all, and there are so many competing demands that we can have an aha moment that slips by without the action to then like run with it, or to brainstorm, or to contact that person, or to do whatever the next step is. So really, I'm giving you permission. I'm sure you've had aha moments within the last few weeks or month. Do something about it. Take a moment, sit in that aha moment, and then take the natural next step from that. You officially have my permission, not that you needed it. In any case, I promised a free resource. I have a turnover playbook that really gets at 4 simple supervisor habits that help reduce turnover for your frontline workforce. You can get this. It's a free PDF download. It's at iddleader.com/supervisor. You also get to sign up for our mailing list, our email list, that is, which we send out weekly tips, encouragement, and insights on how to basically do people first leadership and to have the best place to work that's possible. So check it out, iddleader.com/supervisor. And I can't wait for you to share with you the next episode, the second half of this conversation. But until next time, here's to you. Keep up the amazing work.